Hello, everyone. You are listening to Scenecraft. From opening shots to long takes and epilogues, we examine our favorite scenes from cinema here on the podcast. I'm Cody, here with my co-hosts,
Mark
and Connor.
Today, we'll be discussing a scene from James Cameron's 1997 film, Titanic, for its 25th anniversary theatrical re-release. But first, a little bit of housekeeping. Number one, we want to give a thank you to all of those who checked out our pilot episode, and a special shout out to listener Nicole Marie Loftus for your support. All of the encouragement and feedback from new listeners has been so helpful. Which leads us to number two. We have decided to start releasing episodes of the podcast twice a month instead of once. You can expect new episodes in your feed on the first and third Wednesday of each and every month. We're hoping this will give us a little more momentum, and it gives us the chance to cover both new releases and legacy releases like Titanic. So you get the best of both worlds within 1 month. So again, huge thank you for joining us here on Scenecraft. Before our main scene selection from Titanic, let's kick off with our brief What We've Been Watching segment called Quick Takes.
Speak quickly.
Quickly, thank you.
Quickly, come on. Hurry up, quicker.
Way quicker.
Okay, I'll say it fast.
So, what have you guys been watching?
I recently saw A Man Called Otto, which was directed by Mark Forster in 2023. The log line reads, "This film follows the story of a crotchety old widower whose world is upended when a young, lively family moves in across the street." All right, so I'm gonna take you guys on a little bit of a story here. All right, so let me first off just state that I am an admitted Hanks fan, a Hanksophile, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
And I try to see his films if I can, but I do have limits. I didn't see the Disney live-action Pinocchio remake. But I texted Cody and Connor that I wanted to see this movie, and I'll be honest, their responses made me feel a little bit ashamed. And honestly, the main reason I wanted to see this was because I felt like Hanks was playing, a crabby old man, a villain, and it could be a welcome change from his likable protagonist that he always plays in almost every movie. So I drive to the theater, I open up the doors to find the auditorium absolutely packed with people. And I'd be lying to you guys if I said that I didn't have a little smirk on my face when I was walking down to my seat,
Oh, yeah.
which was sandwiched
I can picture
between.
it now.
Yep, it was sandwiched between two strangers that I've never met before. So it was quite the experience. And with all that said, the movie was just fine. It was nothing spectacular. And truth be told, I couldn't help but feel like I wasn't the target audience for this one. It's heartfelt and it's cheesy, but I don't think I would recommend A Man Called Otto.
Okay.
Well, thanks for seeing that one for all of us.
So now we don't have to.
I also saw Knock at the Cabin, which is M. Night Shyamalan's latest release in 2023. The plot summary reads, while vacationing, a girl and her parents are taken hostage by armed strangers who demand that the family make a choice in order to avert the apocalypse. All right, so there's a lot to like about this movie. It's honestly really well made, and I thought it was a solid thriller. But I am starting to think with more time that someone's enjoyment of this movie will definitely depend on your preconceived notions of M. Night Shyamalan's previous movies, for better or for worse. So on one hand, I think it's likely one of the better written scripts he's had in recent years. And I think that's really thanks to having a team of writers rather than solely depending on himself. And he also had some source material to use as a reference. On the other hand, and I don't want to get into spoiler territory on this, but I was kind of let down by the ending of it.
Huh.
If you're willing to enjoy the ride and not fret too much about where it ends up, I would recommend Knock at the Cabin. How about you, Connor? What have you been watching?
So I recently saw The Quiet Girl, directed by Colm Barade. Came out in 2022, and the logline is a quiet, neglected girl is sent away from her dysfunctional family to live with foster parents in Ireland during the summer of 1981. She blossoms in their care, but in a house where there are meant to be no secrets, she discovers one. It's like a pretty good logline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I loved about this movie, and I love this movie, is how much it surprised me and how much it was able to accomplish in just over 90 minutes. So, really short runtime. This movie really got me. I've been thinking about it every single day since I saw it. And true to its name, it's a quiet, atmospheric film full of details and memories from the perspective of our young main character as she grows up in rural Ireland. I thought it was a really excellent portrayal of how love in families and the absence of love profoundly affects us as children and how it perpetuates in a cycle. I love this movie so much and I highly recommend it. Fair warning that the Irish brogues are pretty thick though, and you might need subtitles if you plan on watching The Quiet Girl.
Definitely going to check that out.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch this one.
Yeah, super good. The next one that I saw was To Leslie, directed by Michael Morris from last year in 2022. And this one is about a single mother who wins the lottery and squanders it just as fast, leaving behind a world of heartbreak. Years later, with her charm running out and nowhere to go, she fights to rebuild her life and find redemption. So, kind of like what Mark was talking about with A Man Called Otto, this movie is fine. I watched it because I had heard so much about Andrea Riseborough's performance, and it was great. She does a fantastic job playing Leslie and portraying her as an alcoholic West Texas woman who we basically see hit rock bottom and try to build her life back up. But outside of her performance, I would say there's not really another reason to watch it. Something that's always felt odd to me is seeing like really famous actors portray people in poverty. And I think the low end of that spectrum, I haven't seen it, but it might be something like Hillbilly Elegy. And it almost feels like a caricature of poverty. And the other end might be something like The Florida Project, right? Which feels very
Mhm.
real and like a human portrayal of poverty. This felt like it was right in between and a little too neat and tidy of a story for me to recommend it being worth a watch. So if you want to see a great performance, watch To Leslie, but otherwise, I would say there's not a huge reason to watch it. How about you, Cody? What have you seen lately?
So I went out to the theater to see the infamous Infinity Pool,
Ooh,
directed by Brandon Cronenberg.
yikes.
Yeah, it was. I think we were all sort of talking this up quite a bit, especially after Possessor.
I'm really
Oh,
excited to
God.
see this.
Yeah, I'm curious to get your thoughts. The plot summary for Infinity Pool reads: a couple are enjoying an all-inclusive beach vacation when a fatal accident exposes the island's perverse subculture of hedonistic tourism, reckless violence, and surreal horrors.
Ugh.
This is my bread and butter.
No, thank you.
There is such a fascinating sci-fi horror premise here. It does give worthwhile commentary on the lack of consequences for the ultra rich, but I do have to say this movie is highly disturbing.
Mm.
A lot of violent, charged imagery. It is often just weird for the sake of being weird.
Oh,
Instead of just following its really incredible setup and great premise to a satisfying conclusion, it chooses to just be bizarre. So I think Infinity Pool might be one to avoid for most people unless you can stomach a movie this gory.
yeah, I'm out.
Was it more disturbing than Possessor?
Slightly, I would say.
Wow.
Oof, jeez.
Yeah. Okay.
Mark's in.
Yeah. And then I've also been watching the new series called Poker Face on Peacock, created by Ryan Johnson. The plot summary reads: Charlie is a human lie detector and can't help but investigate strange crimes and murders as she road trips in her Plymouth Barracuda. Poker Face harkens back to the classic mystery of the week genre. Like most TV ever, some episodes are more compelling than others, but without fail, all of them are a ton of fun. And it's great to see this classic formula brought back to life in a modern, stylish way. The first 6 episodes are streaming on Peacock. I would recommend checking out Poker Face by Ryan Johnson.
Nice.
And with that, let's get into our discussion about James Cameron's Titanic, starring Kate Winslet, Leonardo DiCaprio, among many others. And as with all of our scene selections, beware of spoilers ahead.
I figure life's a gift, and I don't intend on wasting it. You never know what hand you're gonna get dealt next. You learn to take life as it comes at you, to make each day count.
Well said, Jack.
Yeah.
To making it count.
All right, and the plot summary for Titanic. Two star-crossed lovers fall in love on the maiden voyage of the Titanic and struggle to survive as the doomed ship sinks to the Atlantic Ocean. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot to say here, so first let's just get a general take on the film. Mark, what do you think of Titanic?
All right, so let me start off by saying a little bit about my background with this movie. I first saw this movie in theaters with my parents during its original release in 1997. I rewatched it several times on the double VHS bundle that everybody's talking about online.
Oh, yeah.
And there was probably around a 15-year gap until I saw it again in 2012 during the 3D re-release in theaters.
Oh.
And then I haven't seen it since then. And I rewatched this most recent viewing at home. As I imagine with many 90s kids, Titanic was a seminal movie for me. I think this movie is an absolute masterpiece and arguably one of the greatest cinematic love stories to date.
Yep.
The broad appeal of this movie is simply astounding. You have a tragic romance story, an action thriller, and historical fiction with a lot of period-specific details all wrapped in one. And like most Cameron projects, this film pushed so many boundaries, which only adds to the spectacle of the whole experience.
Mm-hmm.
He invested a ton of money in researching and developing a deep-sea camera system that functioned on the outside of a submarine and was capable of withstanding deep-sea pressures. He created a near full-size replica of the infamous ship that also had the capability to safely break into pieces. He had hundreds of extras, all with intricate period-specific costumes. He was massively over budget, a delayed release. Does this sound familiar?
Oh, yeah.
And a three-hour plus runtime. And I think the movie's all better for it.
That's so funny because when this movie came out, I remember so clearly the kids whose parents took them to see it in theaters, which I guess was you. They came back from the experience bragging about it, and like they seemed older, like
Yeah.
they seemed
Oh,
like,
yeah. They
like they were
lived
so
through
grown
it.
up for having seen it, and especially for having seen the infamous drawing scene with Kate Winslet. So I was so jealous, and I didn't see it until years later. But it's always an event when you watch Titanic. It's kind of like, man, do I really want to put myself through this again? This whole thing. But I recently rewatched it again for the 25th anniversary re-release, and it was stunning. I saw it in Dolby, so the sound is incredible. The restoration is perfect. And the CGI, I think, mostly still holds up. It looks great. I hadn't seen it in years, and I think it packed a whole new emotional punch being slightly older than I was the last time I saw it, just like Mark was saying. I agree that I think this film really deserves to be in the conversation for best films of all time. So many times watching it, I was just thinking to myself, like, Cameron, the bastard, just handles everything so perfectly, like almost getting mad at him for how good it is, like making us feel a certain way. The way he cuts back to present day, lingering on an emotional moment for extra impact. He's just a director in the truest sense, in that he controls every aspect of the film, the largest production ever attempted at that point, like a true conductor. He just knows exactly how to pull at the right strings at the right time. So it was really a great rewatch experience for me. I loved it.
I think it is so easy, at least for me, to forget how incredible this movie is. It slips back into the public consciousness and its assumed place in pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's been parodied over and over and over again for 25 years, and it's just so unquestionably embedded. And sometimes I forget to remember why that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
Titanic is one of the best examples of what filmmaking can be. It pushes boundaries, like you guys have said. The whole movie is built on this perfect harmony between these impossible, epic set pieces and touching, tiny, granular moments. And I'm still totally blown away by what this team had to endure to meticulously recreate like Mark said, a full-scale replica of the Titanic in a 17 million gallon water tank,
Wow, that's so crazy.
as well as multiple hero models of the ship,
Mhm.
which are incredible to look at. So you go from that level of technical achievement to a beautiful, quiet shot of an elderly couple curled up in bed as the
Oh.
ship is sinking.
Hmm.
Just that interplay between massive scale, quiet moments, it's amazing. And I think the movie's just so massive, but it's also so touching. And I really loved watching this again. And I'm glad we're talking about this scene today.
Me too.
Yeah,
I can't
well
wait to
said.
discuss it.
So yeah, let's dive into our scene selection, which is really two combined scenes. One being what the unsinkable Molly Brown refers to as the snake pit, and then the real party of the lower deck. And we're going to combine these two scenes into what we're calling "Make It Count." So Connor, do you want to take us through the sequence?
So this is the key scene of the film for me. I'm really glad we're talking about this one. And honestly, we had a lot of conversation around which scene to pick in a movie that's filled with so many great iconic scenes. There's the iceberg ahead scene. There's the famous draw me like one of your French girls scene. We wanted to land on this scene because it really felt like it summarized the movie and its theme of class divide so well. This is the scene where we see the meeting of worlds. So Jack being invited to the snake pit to have dinner with Cal and the upper crust of the Titanic, and Rose longing for something outside of this world that she's becoming trapped in, makes the decision to break out of it and live her life. The contrast that's shown in this scene between people who seemingly have it all in the stuffiest dinner setting, trading veiled barbs with each other, and the working class people in the lower decks who are really connecting and living life to the fullest is such a great visual. This is the joyous peak of the movie for me. I think this is the one that I really remember when I think about this movie. It's the one I want to go to right away, and it occurs at about 56 minutes, roughly a third into the movie.
Yeah, well said. And just to set up the structural component of the sequence, a little bit of context. Jack has basically saved the life of Rose, and Rose's fiance has invited Jack to dinner on first class. So Jack has prepared for this dinner with Molly's help, using her son's tuxedo to sort of look the part. So this scene takes place on the first class deck dining room. And then part one of the scene is how the dinner plays out, him amongst all these aristocrats and trying to blend in. And that part of the scene concludes with Jack leaving a note in Rose's palm that says to make it count and meet him at the clock in the grand entrance of the ship, where he invites her to a real party, as he puts it, in the steerage, the third class deck of the ship. And the party sequence is kind of a series of small vignettes or sub scenes where it just shows Jack and Rose falling in love in different ways and setups. The first being them dancing the Irish jig. Then you see them drinking, having fun, merriment. And then you see the famous Rose on point ballet sequence, and then falls into Jack's arms. And that is where the scene concludes. So let's rewind to the beginning of the sequence and start to break it down.
So this scene starts with a POV shot of Jack entering the staircase into the atrium, and it really helps put us into Jack's perspective. It makes us also feel like we're actually there on the ship itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Jack kind of taking everything in as he experiences being in first class for the first time is also a great way for us as the audience to take in the splendor of the ship as well. We're kind of seeing it through his eyes, which is really nice.
I thought it was a really human moment to see him mimic the other wealthy patrons
Yeah.
at the bottom of the staircase, where he's kind of pantomiming, holding Rose's arm and walking. And I just really love that moment because, as confident as he appears to be, he's secretly a little insecure, and he's still nervous about, appearing as someone who he really isn't. And the other thing that I found interesting was that Billy Zane or Cal ignores Jack as he walks down the stairs,
Oh yeah.
and it's possible that he simply just didn't recognize him all dressed up, but I think more than likely he kind of purposely ignores him. And then shortly after that, Rose starts higher up than Jack, and we get kind of a low angle shot of Rose as she descends the staircase until she finally reaches the bottom level where they're kind of both seen as equals.
Yeah.
And they
That's a good
walk
point.
into the dinner together.
Hmm.
And I really liked that symbolism of Jack's getting this one chance to kind of be at the same level as Rose and be almost seen as an equal, or so he thinks prior to the dinner.
It's interesting that you read Billy Zane's reaction that way because looking at his face watching that scene, to me it reads as he, honest to God, did not recognize him.
I'm with you. Yeah, that's how it felt for me too. It's just
Hmm.
another rich passenger in first class, and I don't recognize this guy, so I'm gonna look away.
And then he reintroduces himself. Like,
I,
you remember Jack or I
you
think
could almost pass for a gentleman.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was more of Leo's reaction to being ignored that made me think that Cal may have done it intentionally.
Well, first off, let's just say Billy Zane, possibly the most despicable villain, biggest bastard ever put on film. Like, seriously, right? I can't think. Like, watching it again, it was like shocking how terrible his character is.
If you
Yeah.
couldn't tell from anything else, his eyebrows say it all.
So after we get out of the stairwell setting, we get into the dining room area. And one thing I really loved about this scene was that Rose kind of provides quick commentary about some of the other passengers,
Yes.
which helps relay that overwhelming feeling of, I'm sure you guys have felt this before. You go to a family holiday and you're introduced to a bunch of new people
Hmm.
and you're kind of overwhelmed at first. But at the same time, what I really liked is it also functions as a way of seeing some familiar faces that we'll later interact with as the ship begins to sink. And that kind of secretly adds another layer of world building and also,
Yeah.
adds more gravity to the horrific situation.
Hmm.
And I love the way that Rose is sort of, in a way, gossiping
Yeah.
to Jack. And you can tell there's some element of glee there. Like, it's the way she sort of sarcastically says, it's quite the scandal.
Right.
She recognizes that it's ridiculous, but at the same time seems to be eating it up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, she's kind of getting to play around with Jack in the way that he was, sharing things that were humorous with her in scenes before. It's her turn to do that now.
And at a certain point, you start to hear old Rose, who played by Gloria Stewart, her voiceover starting to narrate the scene and what's happening. And they actually describe Jack as being believable, but as new money, obviously.
Hmm.
Yeah. The different people at the table have a separate perspective of Jack. Some people
Yeah.
don't know who he is at all,
Right.
whereas Cal and Rose's mother already kind of know who he is. And so they have different levels of understanding of his facade.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, to varying degrees, because some know more than others who is the real Jack, and they disapprove of that and his intentions, versus other people like Molly or some of the other guests who don't know him as well and see him as genuine
Yeah.
and fun and new and interesting.
Exactly. I think Rose's mother obviously looks down upon him, and that's why she asks him pretty leading and demeaning questions. Whereas Molly Brown sympathizes with Jack, lends him the tuxedo, and she also fills him in on proper table manners.
Yeah. And how awesome is Molly Brown, not only in this movie, but in this scene in particular?
So great.
She's seated right next to Jack. I just want to thank her for the instruction on starting from the outside and working your way in. Like, how many of us in our generation learned how to use silverware in a formal setting from this movie? I'm forever grateful for this moment of the scene for teaching us this.
Guys, can I break that down for you a little bit?
Yeah,
Perhaps?
please do.
Yeah, love to hear it.
This is actually known as continental style dinner plating.
Mm.
And you hear continental breakfast, you hear continental style, but I had to actually look up what that means, and what it actually refers to is the fork staying in your non-dominant hand
Mm.
as your knife cuts and pushes your food, and your fork actually staying in the same position in your hand as you're putting food into your mouth. So that's actually the way. I don't know about you guys. That's the way that I eat personally. Like I keep my knife in my right, my fork in my left, and I cut the food and I
That's how
use
I do
my
it. Yeah.
fork. Yeah.
Wow, I don't know how I do it.
It really makes you question things.
Yeah,
But
it does.
apparently, the other style that was used at the time was called the American zigzag method, where you cut your food and then you switch your fork to your dominant hand. But that is why you see 3 or 4 forks on the left side because
Oh,
it's always going into the left hand. And then on the right side, you see an interesting looking spoon, which again,
yeah.
I had to look up. That's a mother of pearl caviar spoon,
Hmm.
which, as we saw, Jack ends up skipping that
Yeah.
course because he's not a fan of caviar.
Which was such a funny moment. I couldn't tell if it was legit or just sort of a tongue in cheek joke that he figured he'd throw in.
Hmm. A power move.
Yeah.
And going back to what you were saying about Rose's mother, Ruth, she very intentionally and snobbily uses the term steerage when asking Jack about his accommodations, which, again, something I had to look up, refers to the lowest category of
Oh, jeez.
accommodation,
Hmm.
which is the third class space, which is called that because it refers to the machinery spaces of the ship,
Huh.
where immigrants and people with less money were often put to sleep, versus something like a cabin, which is funny because earlier we see Jack and Fabrizio actually have a bunk in a legitimate cabin.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So I don't know if that's just the Titanic and its heightened level of luxury that even the lowest is manageable, and Ruth is just being an asshole.
Probably.
But Jack's retort about, there's not too many rats
Yeah,
is
that's
such a
great.
great
It's a good
it's
one.
such a great rebuttal to that. I
Good
loved
zinger.
that. One other thing I really appreciate about this scene too was that Jack has plenty of opportunities to fake who he is as a person, but instead he kind of doubles down on his past and he never seems really overly embarrassed as to who he is. So before the dinner scene starts, he's asked if he is related to a wealthy Dawson family, and he chooses to remain honest and he denies any relation to this rich family. And then later on, they ask where he currently lives and how he got onto the Titanic. And instead of lying at that point, he also says he won it from poker.
Right.
And there's another gentleman at the table that kind of makes a witty remark as if he can relate to it, but nobody can relate to that. And I just found that a really endearing quality about Jack, that he's not afraid of who he is as a person.
To build off that, this is also the scene where I think we officially see Rose fall in love with Jack. So to me, it happened twice. Once during the dinner, when what you were just talking about, Mark, we see Jack explaining his one day at a time approach to life. And I think she realizes that's really what she wants to do and how she wants to experience life. And then once again, a bit later during the dancing scene where we're seeing them spin around together.
Absolutely. I think this really taps into the fact that Rose doesn't want to become her mother,
Hmm.
who has a predetermined life. All the decisions are made for her. And in Rose's case, her marriage is kind of decided for her. There's an earlier scene in the movie where Cal orders her meal for her.
Yep.
The parties are all kind of predetermined. Her whole life is predetermined. And so I think she's attracted to Jack, the person, but also Jack's lifestyle, which is living each day as it comes.
Yeah. And Jack's speech about the way he lives his life and his approach to life, he caps it off with life is a gift, make each day count. And I think somebody just kind of nicely builds on that and turns it into a toast, right? Which then feels like he's almost accepted into this group of first class diners. And I think that's when we also see he actually uses that as his message to Rose when he gives her that note, slips her the note to meet him at the clock. So that's why we're calling this the make it count scene, because it feels like a very pivotal moment, especially for Rose, where she's kind of changing her perspective and really going to make each moment count from here on out and kind of stand up for herself. So after Jack slips Rose the note, we have this sort of in between period where she makes the decision to go meet him at the clock. And we see this amazing tracking shot, right, where he's kind of waiting up the top of the staircase, which is then reprised at the end of the film when Rose, old Rose, sort of passes away in the middle of the night. And this is like her dream sequence that she's reliving because I think sort of seems like this is the moment where she really started living her life, right? Like this is the key point that she would go back to and relive.
One interesting note is that Rose is now shot from a low angle,
Mm,
whereas Jack is kind of, at the top of the staircase. So she's kind of now entering his world. He's
right.
kind of more
Perspective
in a,
shift.
absolutely.
They also incorporate an optical zoom
Mm,
to give it this very dreamlike, ethereal feel, which eventually lands on his face into that iconic line about the real party.
hmm.
But it's just kind of a really graceful approach visually.
Yeah. So we see Jack turn around and say, "How about we go to a real party?" And then there's a very like harsh transition to loud music and Irish jig. We're in this very tight quarters, close, intimate space of the third class. And this is a really fun scene.
I don't know the steps.
Neither do I. Just go with it. Don't think.
So one of the first things we notice when we go to the Irish jig is Jack has lost his coat and his hair is a lot more messy, pretty similar to prior to the dinner. And as Connor had mentioned, the music is a lot more dynamic. And in addition to that, the editing is a lot more kinetic too. So the initial dinner scene, we have a lot of static shots
hmm
looking at different people. And now we're kind of cutting to the music. The music is a lot more lively. We get a lot more shots of the musicians themselves getting into the driving rhythms.
Which we should mention is the band Gaelic Storm
Oh, cool.
is the actual on-screen band playing a number of songs.
Yeah, they had an incredible performance here, and I think
They
they're really
did.
a key to this portion of the scene. And right off the bat, you see people truly enjoying themselves. They're laughing, they're shouting, they're dancing with one another, and it couldn't be any more different than what we had seen with the initial dinner with Rose's family.
And I think that contrast is in direct support of why we chose the scene and one of the central themes of the film, which Connor talked about earlier, which is this class divide, these differing worlds. And I think at this moment is where you first are struck with that chaos of the lower deck, and it makes that difference between the two classes, first class, third class, all the more real and palpable.
Yeah, and we're probably seeing things that Rose has never experienced in her life, right? Like she's sitting down, sort of clapping along to the music, and she sees a guy getting like bumped and knocked to the ground, but he gets up and he's smiling, right? And he like immediately chugs a beer, and she it kind of pans back to her, and she's realizing that like, oh, that's like okay if somebody gets
Hmm.
knocked down, and they're just embracing it. So such a great sense of camaraderie versus like the very stuffy separate, everybody's seated separately in their own tables up in the top area. It's very sort of regimented up there, and this is just such a lively fluid mix of people that are just happy to be celebrating together.
And if you want to look at some of the subtext of the dialogue, I think what you just said, Connor, is summarized perfectly with Rose when she says something along the lines of, "I don't know this dance, Jack."
Hmm.
And Jack turns to her and just says, "Just go with it."
Yeah,
And I think that is a perfect,
totally.
summation of what she's kind of going through. She's not experienced in this world, but I think she does a really good job at just kind of embracing it and just going along with everybody else around her.
And just to bring in some of the artistry of the scene for us to discuss, at the lower deck party, amidst all the chaos, just to support that, everything from the camera operation, still on Steadicam, still fluid but very fluid, versus the snake pit,
Yeah.
which is kind of this calculated circling around the table or just static shots.
Hmm.
And then you have the set deck, which is a lot more cramped. The ceilings are lower in the lower deck. The lighting is a little more flat and poor, as opposed to the sort of warm, glossy sheen of the first
Mm,
deck. And then you have all these amazing details in set design
yeah.
in the lower deck party, such
Mhm.
as the platform where they're doing the Irish jig. You can see there are already these
Yeah.
massive black scuff marks from shoes having been there, as to say, this is the place where you dance. And people have done it. This is where you do it. Cameron is just such a master at details like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love it. We have to talk about the camera during this dance scene too, right? That camera movement is so good. And I think it's a standout for all of us when we think about this movie. The spinning that happens as Jack and Rose are holding hands and just spinning as fast as they can on the dance floor. It's such a great visual metaphor for a couple things. I think it's the speed in which Jack and Rose are starting to fall for each other, the speed of the Titanic moving full steam ahead at this point, and the speed in which Rose's life is sort of careening towards her destiny of maybe being trapped in an arranged marriage. It's all kind of, coming together in a head in this scene. And here's that second part where we're seeing Rose really letting go and falling in love with Jack.
I have to say that the shot of Kate Winslet spinning in the circle and she just bursts out
Yeah.
laughing is arguably one of the most iconic scenes in the movie. And I think about that all the time when I think of this movie. And I think you
So
nailed
good.
it perfectly. I think it's one of the many moments where she just kind of lets herself go and she really falls in love with Jack.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's almost like a promo or a trailer shot right there. That seeing that shot, it flashes back to me
Yeah.
to childhood as if I've seen it a bunch of times, and I think everyone recognizes it as that icon, that really brilliant shot. And like you say, Connor, visually representing so much behind it, in addition to just the technical mastery of how they did it, and just watching a little behind the scenes of this particular sequence, just the way the steady cam is
Oh, wow.
rotating around them, it's really difficult to do and capture it as they did, so kudos.
That's super cool.
And then from that first person spin shot,
Yeah.
that's when we get that's when we get right into the hard cut to the smoking room,
Mm-hmm.
where the gentlemen, as they say, are all discussing politics, and someone says the line something like, "That's what Rockefeller said, but the Supreme Court does not swallow it." And it's just such an incredible line to cut to, and the stark contrast from what just came before. It's just such a nice visual gag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a genius move from Cameron. So funny. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely played like a comedic cut to me, and I really liked that about it.
Yeah, and then of course it's almost sort of used as a reset button as well, going back into the steerage party,
Yeah.
because it resets the scene. They're now drinking at a table, and Jack and Rose steal 2 Guinnesses, I
Hmm.
think is what they're drinking.
Mhm.
She chugs like half of it.
Yeah, two guys are arm wrestling. Somebody gets elbowed and knocks a drink on Rose, and we actually see Rose like being fine with it, right? Like she's sort of fully embracing this world, and I think that speaks a lot to her character. It was a point that Mark brought up that she doesn't get upset or ruffled when a drink spills on her. She just goes with it, right? Just like Jack said, and I think that's just a great visual too throughout this entire sequence. It's such a great example of showing and not telling us who these people are and who they will become.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We mentioned the spinning scene being very iconic in this scene overall and in the movie, which leads to another
Oh yeah.
really, really memorable scene where Rose strikes a ballerina pose on point on her toes. And this is another one of those scenes. It's funny that 2 of the moments in this scene are some of the most vivid I have of this movie. And in this portion of the scene, she is showing that she can stand her own. She's kind of almost a little bit showing off
Oh yeah.
to some of the strong guys that are doing the arm wrestling. And she quite literally levitates in this scene. They have a shot from behind, and you literally see her rise up in the frame. And that was another one of those moments that is just indelible and has stuck with me
Mm.
long after finishing the movie.
We also see the like big tough men, right? As she calls them, after she like steals her cigarette. We see their reaction to her performing this like incredible physical feat where she's standing up on her tiptoes, and they're like amazed that she's doing it. Like they've totally been bested in this situation, and I think she really earns the respect of everybody down there. So I think it's also a nice callback to when Jack is sort of accepted with the toast to make it count. And then here we're seeing her being accepted by like the toughest people in the third class, right? For what she's done with this on point stunt.
This is pretty close to the end of the scene. I think the last thing that we see is Rose and Jack kind of joining a line
Hmm.
of people on the dance floor, including Fabricio, and they kind of run through the crowd. It turns into a slow mo
Yeah.
and then fades into the next scene.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty much the end of this scene.
There's a couple uses of slow mo throughout the film, and I think the way that it's used here is almost like it fades into a memory that then blurs into the next day, right? So it's like, who knows how this night ended up? Looked like it was a blast. Wish I could have been there.
Hmm.
Definitely.
So now that we kind of talked about the major key points of the scene, one of the things I wanted to circle back to would be the score and just the sound design in general, and also the use of musicians. So for this portion of the scene, we see a lot of the dancers interact with the band. They tell them
Hmm.
to, play this song and to play faster, and they're kind of all part of the experience together.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's again another contrast, right, to like the more first class musicians, we'll call them, who we see at the very end of the movie in that very notable scene where they're sort of all playing together while everybody's fleeing on the boats. But they make a comment that they don't listen to us during dinner anyway, so we might as well just keep playing if they're not listening to us now, versus
Mhm.
the musicians in third class. Everybody's fully participating and interacting, like you said.
Yeah, so I think that kind of wraps up the structure of this combo scene itself, but I'd love to hear any closing thoughts you guys have about this awesome movie.
Oh man, I don't know where to start. It was just so amazing seeing this movie again, and so much more appreciation for it now that, again, like watching it a bit older, different life stage. I'm sure we left a ton out. There's just too much to cover, I think, with this movie. It's really an incredible feat of filmmaking, and so happy to have seen it in 3D for the first time. That was very cool. I think it's one of the very best movies ever made, and so glad it's out back in theaters for people to see.
Yeah, Connor, I would completely agree with what you said. I think this movie is absolutely tremendous. And I think one thing I really appreciated more this viewing was Cameron's decision to frame the entire story from the perspective of a deep sea team diving to explore the
Yeah.
remains of the Titanic
Hmm.
and also search for the heart of the ocean necklace. And what's so wonderful about that is that it allows the audience to meet the present day Rose prior to her reliving the tale. I feel like a lot
Hmm.
of directors would have made the decision to start the movie with Rose walking onto the ship and kind of going from there. But because we see her as an older woman recounting this, it just adds a whole new level of emotional resonance. And I think it's just a smart decision by Cameron. And I think it is proof that he is truly one of the greatest directors living today.
Yeah, getting to relive Titanic has been so fun, and I saw it in Dolby 3D, and it was such a textured, rich experience. And like Connor was saying earlier, the
Mm.
restoration is immaculate.
Mhm.
It was a packed theater. Every seat was booked, feeling the energy of the crowd, people who have seen it before, whether as kids or as an adult or newcomers. There was a pack of teenagers to my right, and just hearing them kind of giggle at certain moments and hearing the crowd fade and lift and cry. So getting to experience that again was just such a joy for me and for all of us to talk through the scene. So thank you guys.
Yeah.
And thank you to our listeners and fellow movie enthusiasts for reliving the scene with us. Do you have a favorite scene from Titanic? You can email us at scenecraftpodcast@gmail.com with any of your thoughts or comments, or follow us on Instagram at scenecraftpodcast for the latest updates on the show. You can also support the podcast by leaving us a review on your platform of choice. A very special thanks to Jordan Summerlad for our theme music. And last but not least, a fond farewell to the Regal Lincolnshire, our favorite theater back home in Illinois. This has been Scenecraft, where we break down the craft behind our favorite scenes. See you all next time.